Seiichi is a fat and ugly loser who gets bullied in school a lot. This comes to an end when his entire school is transported to a new game world. Here he gets a cheat skill to get overpowered and wins his own harem of sexy girls, before going on to dominate this world as a top G before that. Seiichi was just a normal high school student who found himself in a strange world with a thick sexy redhead in front of him. While blinded by this beauty, he suddenly remembers what had happened before he saw this beautiful and mysterious lady. As a usual practice for the ugly and fat Seiichi, his classmates bully him and insult him for being stupid and smelly. He sobs while receiving bad comments from them, and they are suddenly interrupted by the sound of the public address system. The voice tells them that they should all sit down while they listen to the announcements. Seiichi lays down on the floor as the voice reveals that the students are going to be teleported to another world. It also informs them that they have been granted the power to check their statuses. However, the voice adds that if they form groups, they would be teleported into a safe place, but the students become confused and immediately obey the voice as they begin to form groups. Seiichi the pig goes to meet some of his classmates to form a group, but they insult him and tell him that they do not want to be seen with him. The voice immediately tells the students to prepare for teleportation, and all of the students become teleported while leaving Seiichi alone. The voice becomes surprised on seeing the loser.
Me personally, I wouldn't take this level of disrespect.
And he immediately tells Seiichi that he would grant him a special skill before his teleportation. Seiichi with his fatso persona begins to wander in a forest and begins to cry as he becomes hungry after 5 days of starving the mysterious place. He sees a worm and decides to be the early bird, but as he tries to hit the worm, he is unable to reach the worm and he begins to cry for going through so much pain. Seiichi suddenly sees the fruit, and when he checks with his skills, he realizes that the fruit is called the fruit of evolution, but as he eats it, he becomes disappointed as the fruit tastes bad. Seiichi eats the fruits anyway, and he suddenly hears a voice telling him the effects of the fruit he had eaten. Seiichi begins to wonder who owns the voice, but he immediately realizes that the voice belongs to the system. Then he yells at the voice that nothing has happened to him, which means the fruit is good for him. Seiichi wanders off to look for food, and as he peeps into the forest, he sees a group of clever monkeys playing around a bunch of fruits of evolution. He becomes excited and decides to plan on how he would take the fruits in order to survive, but he immediately sees that the clever monkeys are gone, and he steals the fruits of evolution and some highest grade recovery potion. Meanwhile, the other students find themselves in a bougie-looking city where they all meet themselves, but some of Seiichi's friends asks each other if they have seen him. Then Kanazuki, who is a female friend, tells the rest that Seiichi has been teleported to another place in the strange world. Kenji, who is a male friend, tells the rest that he hopes Seiichi is okay and doing well on his own. On the other hand, the uncultured swine Seiichi sees a mushroom and begins to eat it, but he suddenly becomes paralyzed and the system immediately tells him that he has gained a skill of poison and paralysis resistance. Suddenly, one of the clever monkeys attacks Seiichi, and when he checks the status, he realizes that the monkey is at level 120, which is way more powerful than him. The clever monkey hits Seiichi, and he begins to bleed, but he immediately takes the recovery potion to save himself. Then he begins to yell as he gets defeated by the monkey. The monkey then tries to eat Seiichi, but the monkey gets killed by Seiichi's stench, and immediately the monkey disappears and turns to a lot of gifts and abilities for Seiichi. He checks the skills out, and he also finds a book on the clever monkey's knowledge. The system notifies Seiichi that he has to begin his evolution, and he immediately begins to cry out in pains as his body parts begins to reduce in size. And when he checks his body, he sees how thin he is, but when he checks his stats, he notices that he has only undergone 1 out of 10 levels of the evolution.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
Seiichi becomes angry as his level has not changed since he defeated the clever monkey. 5 months later, Seiichi uses his knowledge of the clever monkeys to create his stats and survive in the forest, but his joy becomes cut short when he sees that he is being attacked by a level 311 necrowolf. Seiichi uses his skills to knock the wolf out, and he praises himself for being too strong for a level 1 hero. He also gathers the gifts and skills from the Acrowolf, and he acquires a water spirit dagger. He gets the Acrowolf knowledge book, and he goes through the 9th stage of the evolution while screaming like a 9-year-old girl. After the evolution, he notices he has 1 more evolution, then he wonders what would happen to him if he finishes his evolution. Seiichi questions his life choices when he sees that he is being surrounded by clever monkeys, But as he tries to run, he is stopped by a huge Kaiser Kong who tells him that he should fight with it. Seichi wonders how the monkey can talk, but he realizes that he has greater issues. Then he begins to fight with the monkey, and as he is able to dodge the monkey's first attack, the monkey becomes shocked as it tells Seichi that she is a female Kong named Saria. Seichi begins to feel weird about Saria's revelation, but he continues to fight with her while she becomes more interested in him for being strong as he is able to dodge her attacks. After using her most powerful skill, Saria becomes more deeply rooted in love as she sees that Seichi dodged her attack without getting hurt. Seichi decides to use his stench to drive Saria away, but he becomes shocked as she is not affected by his stench, and instead she tells him she loves him, and immediately carries him away, while telling him that she wants to marry him. Saria prepares a nice meal for Seichi, and he tries to refuse at first, but when his stomach says otherwise, he eats the food and realizes how nice it tastes, but while eating, Saria gives him a new set of clothes and Seichi feels awkward as a gorilla is trying to act like a decent girl. Seichi asks Saria how she learned how to speak and Saria shows him some books she had seen in an abandoned cave, but as Seichi takes the books, the system tells him that he has acquired the knowledge from the book. After a while, Saria and Seichi go to look for food, and while Seichi plans a jailbreak, he tiptoes to escape, but he suddenly sees a huge spider, and before he is able to do anything, punches the spider, and the spider goes flying away. Saria checks if Seichi is okay, and Seichi immediately realizes that Saria is genuinely worried about him. But back at the cave, Saria tells Seichi about the fruits of evolution as she also asks him if he knows about it, but he denies it. Seichi is unable to lie further, and he immediately confesses that he was the one that stole the fruits from the clever monkeys. Saria tells him that he is forgiven as she had planned to give the fruits to her future husband. Then she asks him if he hates her, but he tells her that he does not hate her, and she would become a very good bride if she marries a gorilla.
Oh my God! Wow!
Saria takes this seriously, and she begins to imagine an Alabama wedding, and even the souls from heaven knows that there is something wrong with this. The other students begin to complain to Zakia, who is in charge of their training, and they tell him that they want to fight real battles instead of playing with the sticks given to them. Zakia tells the students that they have to train with the wooden swords so as to get accustomed to wielding the real swords. Then Seiichi's friends all decide to go and train on their own so as to improve their skills. Meanwhile, Seiichi decides to make a run for his life so as to stay away from Saria, but as he is running, Saria immediately runs after him as she yells at him not to run towards the forest because of something dangerous there, but Seiichi refuses to listen to her, and he continues to run until he is unable to see her again. Seiichi suddenly sees a cave, and when he enters, he finds a room that smells like death, and he sees a skeleton figure of a man who immediately tells him that he does not expect to see a human visiting him. The man stands up and he tells Seiichi that he thinks he is not an ordinary human, but Seiichi becomes scared, and he immediately tries to look at the man to know his name and level. He sees that the man's name is the Dark Lord Xenos, and he is at level 1 like him, but when he becomes relaxed, that he would defeat him. Xenos tells him that he should look again, and when he checks again, he realizes that he is doomed to be barbecued, as the real level is 1500. Xenos immediately attacks Seiichi, and Seiichi immediately says his last prayers as Xenos tries to stab Seiichi. Saria immediately blocks it, and she gets stabbed instead. Seiichi immediately goes to meet her to ask her why she risked her life for him, and she replies that she loves him, and he is also kind to her, as he had never shown fear and also interacted with her normally. She also adds that she had died after their brawl, and she was always only able to live after because of her Kaiser Kong special skills. Seiichi becomes angry, and he immediately brings out his weapons to fight with Xenos, who tells him that their love is ridiculous. Seiichi, who is in tears, attacks Xenos, who in turn dodges all of his attacks. Then Seiichi confessed that he loves Saria, and he immediately uses a special movement to defeat Xenos after telling him that he has to respond to Saria's feelings because they have not gone through their final evolution together. Xenos is unable to believe that he has been defeated, and he immediately thanks Seiichi for showing and reminding him what true love looked like, as he would be able to join his lover after his death. Xenos disappears into thin air, and Seiichi goes to meet Saria and kisses her. Then she immediately begins to glow, and the light becomes too much for Seiichi as he moves away from Saria. Suddenly, Seiichi sees a naked female in front of him.
Did you pray today?
And he immediately becomes shocked as he sees her rice cakes with her huge melons. The lady immediately runs to meet Saichi, and she asks him if he does not recognize her. But before he could say anything, she tells him that she is Saria, and she begins to press her huge melons against his body. Saichi and the naked Saria sees a book containing the story of Sinos and his lover Marie, and when they finish reading the book, Saria begins to cry as she feels emotional about the twist in the two lovers' story. Saichi finds some clothes and he gives Saria in order to cover herself, and when he tries to show her a necklace, he looks at her and gawks at her like a perverted idiot. The system tells Saichi that he has gained the ability to perform dark magic, and that he would go through his final evolution, and at that moment Saichi knew he f***ed up. After his final revolution, Saichi shows off his bets like charm, and Saria becomes stricken at the handsome demigod in front of her. Saichi then tells Saria that he wants to leave the forest to go and find his schoolmates, then she immediately tells him that she would follow him to anywhere his destination is. The two suddenly hear a fanfare playing, and a short talking sheep jumps in front of them to tell them that he is in charge of the entire dungeon, and after introducing himself as Sheep, Sheep tells Saichi of how he had been watching and laughing at him going through his final stage of evolution. Mr. Sheep tells them that he has come to give them the gifts they earned for clearing the dungeon, and he immediately gives them a new set of fruits of evolution, and he also changes Saria's dress into a more beautiful one which reveals her giant cannons, while he gives Saichi a full-face helmet which has a special ability of opening up the mouth part for him to eat. Sheep tells the two that they should prepare as he would teleport them out of the dungeon, but Saichi yells at the short sheep that he would have his revenge once they meet again. On their way to the city, Saria tells Saichi that she is excited, and Saichi tells himself that he would begin a new adventure with Saria, and because she is with him, he would be able to overcome any problem that comes his way. On their way to the nearest town, Saichi tells Saria that they would have to go to an adventurers guild in order to register their names, but he sees it as an opportunity to meet up with his friends. The two suddenly see a little slime on their way, and as Saichi defeats the slime, he begins to think of himself as an ugly monster with so much power, but the slime turns into a pair of boots and 2 more skills. He gives Saria the boots, and she feels beautiful after eating the boots, but as Saichi takes the skills, the helmet gets off his head and turns into a common robe and a letter. He reads the letter and realizes that it was all because of the sheep they met at the dungeon. After a few hours of walking, they eventually get to the capital Telbert, and before they are able to enter, a guard named Claude asks the two to present a means of identification, and when they are unable to do so, Claude tells them that they should use the Gem of Truth. After confirming their intention, Claude advises them to get a means of identification, and when Saichi tells him that they would register with the guild, he advises them against it as it would not be okay for them. After exchanging pleasantries, Saichi and Saria enters the city, and when they reach the guild, Saichi sees that the place is looking normal, but when he opens the door, he realizes that the place is filled with creeps, and when Saria tries to look, he protects her from looking as he tells her that it would not be okay for her. He decides that they would leave, but before they are able to do so, they suddenly meet the guild master named Gusel Clute, who is the head of the creeps. He looks like someone who had been forgotten at the gym as he is obsessed with his muscles, and he forces Saichi and Saria in so that they would register with the guild. On getting inside, the receptionist named Erin tortures a fatso, but on seeing the two, she immediately changes into a decent and well-behaved person as she asks Saichi what his reasons are for registering with the guild. Saria becomes excited, and she tries to convince Saichi to register them there as she sees the other adventurers having fun, and Saichi immediately agrees to register them there. Suddenly some gangs called the Mohawks try to take Saichi, their boss, to defile them. But as he gets there and he sees that the boss is trying to make him suck on his sausage, Saichi runs for his life. He gets back to the guild and Erin tells him that they would have to take a few tests, and the test is meant to be taken by a level adventurer. A beautiful lady comes in, and she is introduced as Artoria the Calamity, but Saichi becomes excited as he gets lost looking at Artoria's melons. Saria calls Saichi to order, and they begin their journey to go for the 3 tests, which includes demolishing a building, helping an orphanage, and walking a dog. Saria decides to help at the orphanage, while Saichi follows Artoria Telford the remaining 2 tests. On their way, Artoria helps a boy who was injured, and when a bunch of iron rods try to fall on them, she saves herself and the little boy with her defense magic. On getting to the building that is to be demolished, Saichi goes to check the place out, and when he touches a part of the building collapses and Artoria becomes sad as she thinks Saichi is in danger. She begins to recount how everyone close to her has gotten hurt, which gives her the name Artoria Olath Calamity. Seichi gets out of the dust and he sees Artoria crying, but she immediately yells at him for putting himself in danger, and the next minute, she apologizes to him and tells him that they have to go for the next test. Then Seichi begins to wonder how nice Artoria is. Meanwhile, the students still continue their training on becoming a hero, but Zakia tells another warrior named Orv that he wants to defeat the Demon Lord himself, as he does not want any of the students to lose their lives while fighting for a battle that is not theirs. On getting to the last quest, Seichi realizes that the dog he is meant to walk is not exactly a dog, but a huge wolf-like beast, and as the beast named Milk chases Seichi around the compound, the owner and Artoria stays and watches Seichi screaming for his life. The owner of the beast compliments Artoria for smiling more, and she asks her if it is because of Seichi, and Artoria immediately calls Cap, and she denies it while blushing. Back at the guild, Gussel presents the reward for the tests as he brings it out from his underwear, but when Eren asks Seichi and Saria if they have an inn, they reply to her to tell her that they would camp outside. On hearing this, Artoria immediately suggests that the two come to stay in her inn, but this gesture surprises Eren and Gussel, as they know how hard Artoria can be. The guild prepares Seichi and Saria for their first test, and Artoria tells them to look for medicinal herbs, but before giving the full instructions, Seichi and Saria become excited as they both run off to look for the herb. Few minutes later, Saria shows Artoria what she has gotten, and after being praised, the two ladies see Seichi running towards them with excitement. But when he shows Artoria his herbs, they see that he is unable to get the herbs, but he is only able to get some rare mushrooms. Seichi becomes sad, and when Artoria tells him to look harder, he runs off to the forest to look for more hens, but he suddenly hears some men talking about a teleportation plan, but as stupid as he is, Seichi decides to ask the men about the herbs. He asks the men who turn out to be demons, who are also scared of their master called Leah. Then the three idiots ask each other to know if Seichi heard their plans, but they all decide to kill them. The leader of the idiots immediately summons a huge troll to kill Seichi, and as the troll hits his baton on Seichi, the three idiots think he is dead until they suddenly see that he is using a kind of magical power to hold on to the baton and eventually breaks it. The demons see how powerful Seichi is, and they've all run away, leaving Seichi clueless, as he only wanted to ask them about the herbs. Seichi goes back to meet Artoria and Saria to show them the rare plants he got, and when Artoria sees how sad he is, she gives him some herbs and tells him to turn it in at the guild. Meanwhile, the three demons goes to meet their master Leah, who asks them why they went to put traps on the field, but when they explain to her that the traps are leading to the greatest member of the Demon Lord's army dungeon, she tells them that they have done a good job, but they are going to be punished for not following her instructions. She gives them 500 lashes each, and she tells them that it is supposed to teach them a lesson not to disobey her again. The following day, while on their way to do their final test, Saria and Seichi see Claude, who asks them if Artoria is their test proctor. Then Claude tells the two that Artoria is a kind person, and they should try to make her happy if they could. On the field for their final test, Artoria explains to the two that they have to defeat some slimes in order to clear their test, but when the slimes begins to show up, Seichi tries to kill one of it, but before he could, the slime suddenly teleports and Artoria pauses the test and tells them that they would have to go back as the field is full of teleportation traps. Artoria tries to walk away, but she mistakenly steps on one of the traps, and before she teleports, Seichi and Saria hold her hand, and they all teleport into a maze-like dungeon together. After appearing in the dungeon, Artoria scolds Seichi and Saria for risking their lives, but they tell her that they did not want her to go alone. Artoria then gives Seichi a guide stone, and she explains that it is used to locate one's party members anytime they get lost. Then she also adds that if the stone turns red, it means the life of the other member is in danger. Artoria decides that they should check the dungeon out, and she mistakenly steps a brick, which immediately reveals a huge brick wall between herself and Seichi with Saria. Seichi becomes shocked, and he tries to find a way to get back with Artoria, but all the patches are a dead end. Then Saria reminds him of the guide stone, and when they try to use it, the stone became their most possible way out, but the stone points towards the brick dividing them, and Seichi feels stupid for it. Saria finds a room with a chest in it, and when she calls Seichi to check, they find a talking treasure chest, but as the chest grows out arms and legs, Seichi uses his magical water binding ability, and he is able to level up and gain some skills by defeating the chest. They also learn about the story behind the treasure chest, but they get distracted as Saria feels a huge tingling sensation on her melons.
Wait a minute!
When she brings out the guide stone from her melons, she shows Seiichi, and they see that the stone has turned red. On the other hand, Artoria sees a huge door, and she decides to enter it without a tangible reason, but on getting inside, she is faced with a huge monster named the Black Dragon God, and she decides to defeat the monster, but the monster tells her that she has a death wish. Leah tells her minions about the Black Dragon God and how dangerous he is because he is the strongest member of the Demon Lord's army. Seiichi and Saria begin to wonder what they can do to go and save Artoria. However, Artoria decides to use her strongest ability against the monster. She uses her Calamity ability but while trying to defeat the monster so that she would try to find Seiichi and Saria. The monster stabs her, and she falls down feeling disappointed in herself for not talking Seiichi and Saria home. She waits for her death as the Black Dragon God tells her that he would finish her off with his fire breath. Artoria suddenly wakes up as she faintly hears her name, but when she opens her eyes, she sees Seiichi and Saria as Seiichi uses his robe to block the fire breath from hitting them. Seiichi smiles at Artoria, and he tells her that they have come to rescue her like she does not already know that. Artoria suddenly asks the two how they are able to find her, and Seiichi explains to her, after knocking out the Black Dragon God for a bit, that they had to break the walls before getting to her. Seiichi notices that the Black Dragon Lord is getting conscious, and he instructs Saria to take Artoria to a safe place as he gives her a recovery potion to take her away from danger. Seiichi immediately faces the Black Dragon God, and they begin to fight, but Seiichi is unable to get through the monster's skin. The monster uses a kind of magic on Seiichi, and with some skills, Seiichi is able to break through the spell, and he uses a new skill he unlocked while fighting to defeat the Black Dragon God. After defeating the monster, Seiichi becomes tired, and Saria immediately goes to meet him, and as she sees that he is not hurt, she tells him how Artoria's health is. As usual, Seiichi gains more skills from defeating the Black Dragon God, and he also gets a copy of the dragon's biography, where he learns how humankind betrayed the dragon. After reading the book, Seiichi begins to cry, and he feels bad for killing the dragon.
We don't do that here.
That tries to kill him and his friends first. Saria becomes worried about how they would go back home, and as she runs around like a mad fellow, Seiichi calms her down and tells her that he would get them home safely. Before they teleport home, Seiichi levels up again, and he gets a new robe that is more stronger and advanced than the one he had before, but he also receives a letter from Mr. Sheep, who tells him his new skills and rewards from clearing the dungeon. Mr. Sheep also adds that he has gone on a vacation, and he would advise that Seiichi does not clear any dungeon before his arrival. Seiichi gets them to teleport back home after he has eaten the Black Dragon God's gem to possess all of his powers, but on their way home, Artoria wakes up, and she realizes that Seiichi has been carrying her all along. She feels weak, but Saria explains to her that she is unable to walk yet as she is just recovering. On getting to the guild, Aaron and Gussel throw a party as they have been worried about the three adventurers, but all this makes Artoria feel bad, as she had thought she was bringing misfortune to everyone around her. Artoria becomes overwhelmed, and she immediately runs off, but Saria tells Seiichi to follow her and bring her back to the guild, because she is not feeling too well. Meanwhile, Leah tells her demon servants that the Black Dragon God has been killed and they need to be on alert, because there is a demon slayer out who might tend to look for them as well. Seiichi runs to find Artoria, but he runs into Adriana, who was the owner of the beast he had walked during his first test at the guild, and she tells him that he should stay close to Artoria, because of what she has been going through. Seiichi thanks Adriana, and he leaves, but he uses the guide stone to find Artoria, and he sees her in the demolished building where he had his first test with her. He goes to meet her, and she asks him if the people at the guild really love her. As she had been thinking, they are all in danger because of her curse of having bad luck up to 2 million times more. Seiichi suddenly hugs Artoria, and he tells her sweet words in order to make her feel better, but Artoria becomes shocked as he is able to make such a bold move towards her. Saria waits at the guild as she wonders why Seiichi is taking so long to come back. However, Seiichi hugs Artoria, and he tries to convince himself that he is only being supportive, but he gets carried away by her warm body and beautiful smell.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
While fighting in his head, Artoria becomes uncomfortable, and he immediately takes his hands off her, but after thinking on how to help Artoria, Seiichi suddenly thinks that Artoria would be happy if he does something about her bad luck. Seiichi suddenly becomes a superhero as he remembers that he had taken a ring from the treasure chest in the dungeon, and the ring is supposed to change all of Artoria's bad luck to good luck. Seiichi puts the ring in her finger, and he promises to stay by her side always till she is able to be on her own. But on hearing this, Artoria suddenly stands up and runs away. Seiichi wonders what he has done wrong again, and it suddenly hits him that he had proposed to her indirectly. But as he runs to correct himself, he stops and smiles like an idiot to decide to leave it that way if it would make her happy. On the other hand, Artoria runs to a corner and she looks at the ring, but she begins to wonder why her heart is beating a little bit faster. Seiichi and Saria sit to have breakfast, but he is unable to eat, and he explains to her that he does not feel okay about what had happened between him and Artoria the previous day. He also adds that he notices that Artoria is avoiding him as he gets a flashback of how she ran away after seeing him earlier that day. Seiichi calms down and he asks Saria what she wants to do that day, and she tells him that she is going to the orphanage, while he tells her that he wants to get some information about the new world, so as to know more about his friends and classmates. Seiichi goes to meet Gussel, and he asks him about the information he is looking for, and Gussel gives him a magazine of his annoying muscles, while flaunting them in his face. Seiichi did not expect much, and when he sees Eris, he asks her the same question, but she gives him magazines containing some perverted contents. Gussel tells Seiichi that they were joking with him, and he also adds that he would get the information he wants from the Royal Library. Then Gussel immediately pulls out a map from his sausage pocket and gives it to Seiichi, who gets disgusted. The king who summoned the heroes has a discussion with his sorcerer, who advises that the students are given real monsters to fight with before the huge fight with the Demon Lord. The king agrees, but the sorcerer also suggests that the students be taken to Barbator Magic Academy, where they would be able to learn more in order to prepare them for the battle. The sorcerer also adds that the students should be given enslavement bracelets, so that they would be able to obey any instruction given to them without complaints. Then the king agrees to this, while the two laugh at their brilliant ideas. Artoria runs off to the city as she begins to wonder what is wrong with her heart as it is beating fast, while she remembers Seiichi's face. Seiichi goes to the library, and as he sees that he is unable to get more information on what he is looking for, he decides to learn more about magic, but he notices that as he flips the pages, the system tells him that he has acquired a new type of magic. Seiichi flips the pages of the books, and he gets a lot of magical skills, including magical creation.
Oh my god! Wow!
And this makes Seiichi yell out loud as he misses his normal like of being a fat loser. After reading at the library, Seiichi decides to head back to the inn. But on his way, he plans on how to devote more time into looking for his friends, but while thinking, his stomach begins to make some unpleasant sounds to signify that he is hungry. He eats a painting from a little girl in the market and puts it in his item box, but he gets distracted by a lovely smell and decides to trace the smell to a cafe. On getting to the cafe, Seiichi orders food, and after eating, he sits with the owner of the cafe named Node and another man in the cafe called Ranz. On the other hand, Artoria is unable to point out what she is feeling like until she sees Adriana, who offers to help her by discussing what she is feeling like. Adriana points out to Artoria that she is in love with Seiichi, even though she knows he has Saria, and the ring on her left hand is a proof of their eternal love. But seeing this, Artoria agrees, and she becomes determined to tell Seiichi how she feels about him, but Adriana tells her that she is an expert in that field. Seiichi tells Ranz and Nood what his predicament is with Artoria, and they advise him not to tell her it's a mistake, and he has to accept the two ladies by showing his love to them, both without masking one side, obviously larger than the other. Seiichi takes the advice, and when he goes to pick Saria, he stands in front of the door to the orphanage and tries to think about what he would do about the two beautiful ladies with him, but he suddenly sees Artoria, who approaches him and kisses him without allowing him to say a word. Seiichi then feels like a prince when Artoria confessed her love to him, and she tells him that she knows he had made a mistake, but she pleads with him to consider her and take her by his side. Seiichi becomes troubled as he does not know what Saria would say about it. Then Saria meets the two in a very close position, and when Seiichi thinks that he is a dead meat, Saria begins to beg him to accept Artoria so that they can all live together in peace. Seiichi accepts the two women into his life, and they all reveal their love to their friends and close ones, while they all congratulated them, thereby making Seiichi a lucky man in a new world. Gussel tells Seiichi that he has a present for him, and then present is a map for him to go and get a horse, as it is a necessity for every adventurer, and as usual, Gussel takes out the map from his sausage pocket, while Seichi complains about it again. Seichi goes to get the horse alone as Saria and Artoria tell him that they have other plans, but on getting to the stable, the owner of the stable tells Seichi about the Royal Cup, which is a race for adventurers, in order to win some extravagant prizes. The man tells Seichi that the race is dangerous, and he would be needing a good horse in order to win the race, but Seichi becomes confused as he did not tell the man he would be entering the competition because she is just hearing about it. The man begins to show Seichi the different breeds of horses he has and their capabilities, including the deer horse, which is the most dumbest of all horses, and its special ability is shown as one of the deer horses forgets to breathe and dies on the spot. The man shows Seichi his last horse, which is actually a donkey, as Seichi points it out to the man. But the man tells him that the donkey is named Lulun, and she is wild as she has not bonded with anyone since her birth. The man enters Lulun's stable, and Lulun begins to beat him up. But Seichi notices that the donkey is saying something, and when he uses his language discerning skill, he is able to understand her language. He realizes that Lulun is beating the man up because the man had touched her body in a wrong way, but when the man passes out for a while, Lulun tries to attack Seichi, but he dodges her attacks and he lifts her up. Lulun becomes sad and also surprised at how strong Seichi is. Then she apologizes to Seichi for being rude, and he decides to buy her as the owner of the store tells him to take her away before she kills him. Lulun changes her attitude and Seichi becomes shocked at the switch, but when they get out of the stable, she becomes happy as she had never left the stable to see the outside world before. Lulun becomes hungry and Seichi promises to buy her food, but when they both eat the meat grenade they bought, they both become satisfied at how delicious the food is. Seichi decides to take Lulun home, but on their way, he sees the beast girl he had gotten a painting from. Then he notices a boy in front of her yelling at her. Seichi moves closer to ask what is wrong, and the boy tells him to buzz off as it is none of his business, but the girl named Mei immediately recognizes him as the man who bought her painting. Then she thanks him for patronizing her. The boy continues his conversation with Mei as he tells her to enter a painting competition called the Charity Painting Competition, but Mei replies to him that the competition is not what she is painting for. The boy introduces himself as Clay Burger, and he asks Seichi if he has bought one of his own paintings, but Seichi replies that he had never seen his paintings before. Clay shows Seichi a ridiculous painting of something that looks like a triangle, but when he explains it, he tells Seichi that the paint now captures a young love of a girl to her lover during sunset. Seichi feels like the painting is rubbish, and Lulun the donkey even testifies to it.
Emotional damage!
Seichi tells Mei to go for the competition, and he also tells her that he would enter the Royal Cup, and when he wins she should take that as a motivation for her to enter the painting competition. Mei tells Seichi to withdraw from the competition because it is dangerous, but Clay tells Seichi about the reward, and he also mentions that the 5th position gets a special type of fish called the tambuli fish. Lulun hears this, and she becomes excited to win the 5th position. Few days later, the competition starts and Artoria and Saria come to support their man as they tell him that they would be cheering for him at the front row. Clay and Mei also come to the arena to watch Seichi win, but Mei tries to tell Seichi to quit because of the dangerous nature of the game. At the arena, the adventurers are introduced and the anchor named Lorna, who is one of the city's Valkyries, announces the prices. She informs them that the 2nd place would get the extravagant price of having the sexy pictures of the Valkyries Captain Louise, while the 1st prize is a ticket to spend a day with the Valkyries. Seichi and Lulun become disappointed at the prices because they expected the prices to be in form of money or other possessions. The competition begins and some adventurers run off on their horses, while the ones that had purchased a deer horse stay still as their horses die on the spot. Lulun is unable to run, and she begins to beg Seichi as she tells him that she had gotten too excited about the tambuli fish and she skipped her breakfast because of that. The other adventurers kotai yes the race while a lady tells the rest of the adventurers that she would win the race. Then she immediately uses a whistle to summon some wolves and a huge hell wolf to stop the other adventurers. Lorna sees this and she tries to stop the competition because of the situation. Seichi begins to think of what to do, and he immediately checks his item box to see if he has food stored there, but he finds something better as he sees the fruit of evolution Mr. Sheep had given him for clearing the dungeon. He gives Lulun one of the fruits, and she immediately begins to run fast as she gets more energy, but the other adventurers sees Seichi and his donkey running towards them, and the lady orders the wolves to stop them, But Lulun gets some powers, and she is able to defeat the wolves even when the adventurers think she would be good for the wolves. The other adventurers quit the race after seeing Lulun's skills, and Sadichi is declared the winner of the competition. Artoria and Saria become excited while May and Clay also jump for joy, and May tells him that she would enter the competition as she already has a picture in her mind to paint. Later that day, Lulun begins to cry that she did not get the 5th position, and Sadichi thanks her for winning the 1st place, and he promises to get her delicious foods. Then Lulun becomes so emotional that she hugs him while crying to promise him that she would forever serve him. Suddenly, Lulun begins to glow, and she evolves. At the same time, Saria and Artoria enter the stable, and they are surprised to see a naked lady in front of him. Seichi becomes shocked, then he begins to look at her body like a perverted fool, while Artoria becomes angry at him for staring at her body. Lulun sees her body, and she immediately jumps on Sadichi to hug him, and she presses her naked melons on his body, and he gets a nosebleed after.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
Artoria becomes angry as she demands an explanation, and Seichi tells her that Lulun had eaten a fruit of evolution, but she did not believe him, and she immediately punches him hard, which makes him passes out for a while. Seichi wakes up and Artoria questions him as she is unable to believe his story. Then Saria explains to Artoria that Seichi is saying the truth, but Artoria thinks Saria is trying to cover up for his lies. Saria immediately changes to her gorilla self, and she shows her that she was once a beast, and after eating the fruit of evolution, she changed into a human, and the sea thing has happened to Lulun. Artoria immediately covers Lulun with Seichi's robe, and she drags her out, but few minutes later, she comes back with Lulun, and she reveals the dress she got for her. Seichi commends Artoria's great fashion sense, and she blushes a little while Saria passes comments on Lulun's dress. Suddenly 2 Valkyries enters the room, and they introduces themselves as Lauren and Claudia, but they tell Seichi that he is needed at the palace. Claudia tells him to stretch his hands toward, and when he does, she puts some manacles on his hands.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
And he begins to wonder if he has done anything wrong. He tells his women to be calm as he is coming back, and Lorna tells him that he is being arrested for his evil doings, but Claudia scolds her for joking with their work. Meanwhile, Leah meets with the other members of the Dragon Lord's army, but as she enters, the members scolds her for coming late, and they all have a little conversation on their behaviors before Lucia, who is the Demon Lord's daughter, comes in. Lucia enters with the Demon Lord's aide Kreese. She thanks the members for answering her call, and she also tells them that she needs their help as she is planning to form an alliance with the humans so that her people would not be in danger anymore. She also adds that it's a high theme that they stop the bloodshed between the humans and demons. Kreese disagrees with Lucia, and he tells her that her father would not want that to happen because he was betrayed by the humans. Leah tries to convince Lucia by telling her about the Black Dragon God's death. She tells them that she had summoned the Black Dragon's soul, and when she conversed with him, he had told her that he was defeated and killed by a human named Seichi, and the human had won fair and square. The other members become angry, and they all decide to follow Lucia's command in helping her to form an alliance with the King of Wimber. They all pledge their loyalty to the Demon Lord, and end the meeting, but unknown to them, Kreese goes over his foolproof plan to carry on the legacy of the Demon Lord without receiving commands from Lucia. On the way to the palace, Seichi asks the Valkyries what he has done wrong, and they remind him that he has won a ticket to spend a day with the Valkyries, and they are taking him on that tour. Seichi remembers, and he immediately protests because of the manacles. Then Claudia apologizes, and she removes them and sets him free. They get to the palace, and Lorna shows Seichi their training ground, and she also talks about their captain Louise. But while speaking of the devil, they see Louise training with the other Valkyries, and Lorna immediately tells Sadichi to look carefully. Louise trains with the Valkyries, and she is able to attack them all without them noticing her moves, and Sadichi becomes impressed as he is unable to see her attacks as well. Louise dismisses the Valkyries, and she walks closer to Saichi and introduces herself, but as Seichi stretches his hands forward to greet her, she suddenly hands him a wooden sword and tells him to have a mock battle with her. Seichi, who is unsure of himself, tries to talk his way out of the situation because he knows that Louise would whip his ass in the battle. He sees that he does not have a choice, and he immediately agrees to the mock battle. Then Louise begins to launch some attacks on him, but he is able to dodge everything with his instant movement skills. The Valkyries also become shocked as they see someone who is able to block Louise's attacks. Meanwhile, the heroes are teleported to the Magic Academy, and they are all wondering why they all got a bracelet. Kanazuki talks to Shouta and Kenji, who are also Saichi's friends, that they would need to learn more so as to find Saichi. Suddenly, some students try to bother the three friends by challenging them into a duel, but Kanazuki slaps one of them for trying to harass her, while she beckons on her friends to leave the place. While fighting with Louise, Saichi becomes scared as her attacks are very powerful, and if they hit him, it would have a huge impact of pain in his body. The system suddenly tells us that he has gained more skills. Saichi uses the skills, and he ends up defeating Louise. The Valkyries screams with much surprise, and Saichi also screams as he does not know how he is able to defeat the almighty Louise. Lorna asks Saichi why he is surprised, as they are, and he explains to her that he did not know how he defeated Louise.
Wait a minute.
Louise immediately falls at her feet, and she calms Saichi her master. Then she begs him to teach her his ways, as she would be grateful to him if he can take care of her like his follower. Claudia immediately summons Saichi to a special room, and there she thanks Saichi for what he has done for Louise, and Saichi gets confused as he does not understand what she is trying to say. Claudia explains to Saichi that Louise has never been defeated by anyone else, and because of that she is not able to learn a new skill because of her extraordinary talent of being able to copy a technique and use it her own way. Louise enters the room, and she apologizes to Saichi for calling him her master, without his permission. Then she adds that he saved her because she had been lonely because of her special ability to defeat older fighters at a very young age. She also thanks Claudia for caring so much about her. And while the two ladies have an emotional moment together, Saichi sips his tea and smiles like an idiot. Louise continues to beg Saichi to be her instructor, but he tells her that he does not know how to teach, but she replies that she would watch him fight and steal his skills and techniques. Then the system tells Saichi that he has gained a new skill that allows him to be a good instructor. Suddenly, they hear a loud noise from the king's chambers, and when they go to check, a maid tells them that the king has been attacked. Then Louise tells Saichi to go home so that they would take care of the emergency. Saichi agrees, and the Valkyries leave to go and rescue the king, but Saichi waits for a while, and he questions his life choices and decides to wait and see what is happening. He uses his world's vision skill, and he is able to see the culprit, who loses like a young female child. Saichi checks the girl's status, and he discovers that her name is Olga, and she is 8 years old, but he also notices that she is running towards him, and he immediately catches her. He sees the girl and tells her that she looks like an assassin, but she gets angry and tells him that she would have to kill him. Then she immediately throws some knives at him, and he is able to catch the knives as he tells her that he would confiscate them. The system suddenly tells him that he has activated a reflexive defense technique, and this skill makes him throw the knives at Olga. But Saichi immediately warns her by telling her to dodge the knives, because he did not do it intentionally, as his body had reacted on its own. Saichi tries to talk to Olga, but she continues to attack him until he hits the back of her neck, which makes her unconscious. He carries her, and he begins to wonder why she would try to attack the king, and the Valkyries come to meet him, and he presents Olga to them while they appoint Lorna to interrogate her. They also tell Saichi that the king is asleep and unable to wake up, because Olga has used a cursed knife to stab the king, which makes him cursed into an eternal slumber. The Valkyries begin to cry, and Saichi begins to think of how he would help them. Then he remembers how he is able to avert Artoria's bad luck, and he immediately asks to be taken to the king. On getting to the king's chambers, Saichi becomes very surprised as he sees that the king is Rans, who he had met at the cafe with Node. He begins to wonder if he had been polite to Rans, so as not to invite any form of punishment. Then Louise introduces her brother named Florio, who is the head of the nation's magic division. Florio greets Saichi and explains to him how he has tried to use magic to remove the curse, but they do not know how to break the curse. Saichi becomes unsure of himself. Then he decides to try to use his magic creation skill to create a magic spell to heal and avert the curse on Rans the king. He begins to think of how he would make the spell, and he also tries to make a clear visualization of how the king would be better. But he begins to think about other things instead. He becomes stressed, and he begins to chant that the king gets better, and he unknowingly names the spell the Get Better spell, and as he uses it on Rans, he immediately wakes up. Rans recognizes Saichi and asks his Valkyries why he was asleep, and after explaining to Rans that he was cursed into an eternal slumber, which was changed into an eternal health by Saichi. Rans becomes happy as his good advice had paid off after all. Rans then tells Saichi that he would grant him any wish he wants. On the other hand, the king of Kaiser and his sorcerer Helio plan how they would make the heroes their slaves. Then Zakia comes in, and he asks the king where the heroes are taken to. The king replies that they have been taken as a slave into the magical academy where they would train in order to die for their nation. Zakia protests that the heroes are not meant to be treated in such a way, but the king orders him to keep quiet about it. Kanazuki talks with Kenji and Shouta on how they are being excluded in the academy, but some of the students try to bully them. But Kanazuki is able to talk to Kenji and Shouta, not to cause any trouble by not necessarily answering to the students. Louise takes a bath with Claudia and Lorna, and they all discuss how charming Saichi is because he had asked the king to allow him to teach the Valkyries some skills and techniques of his own. Louise tells the ladies how she feels proud to be his follower because he had saved them multiple times in a day. Louise also asks Lorna if Olga has confessed and spoke about the person that sent her to hurt Rands, but Lorna replies that Olga has decided to keep her mouth shut. Meanwhile, Artoria also takes a bath with Saria and Lulun, and she tells them how she feels worried about Saichi being taken away by beautiful women.
Women.
She expresses her jealousy, and when she asks Saria, Saria sits on the fence by telling her that she is okay with it, because she knows how Saichi is. Artoria becomes angry, and she begins to imagine what Saichi is doing with the beautiful women that left with him, while Saria smiles at her. Saichi lives a life of luxury by taking a bath in a hot spring with Rands the king, and he listens to Rands' dream of trying to build hot springs all around the world, so as to end the fight between humans and demons. On the other hand, as Zakita tries to talk to the king to release the heroes, he suddenly senses an attack, and he stops the attack with his shield. Then he tells the king that someone is trying to kill the king. The king immediately instructs him to go and find who the culprit is, and after Zakia leaves, the king tells Helio that he thinks the attack is because of King Rands' determination to form an alliance with the Demon Lord's daughter Lucia. He also adds that he would not let that be possible as he has already sent an assassin to kill Rands. Seichi sits alone in Florio, who announces that some women want to see him, but he realizes that Artoria and his women had come to see him. Artoria immediately tells Seichi that Saria has been feeling very jealous because he is surrounded by beautiful women in the palace, so they all decided to come and check up on him. Saria immediately denies it and reveals that those were Artoria's words and not hers, but as Artoria gets angry, Louise suddenly calls out to Seichi, and as she runs towards them, her petite melons flow with the rhythm of her steps. Louise sees the ladies and introduces herself and her brother to them. Then Saria introduces herself as Seichi's wife, while Artoria introduces herself as his girlfriend, and Lulun introduces herself as his humble servant, who would serve him with her heart and soul. Seichi becomes embarrassed as he feels like his reputation is at stake, as they would think of him as a perverted fool. Florio commends Seichi to be a strong man who is capable of handling adorable women. Lorna continues the interrogation with Olga, and as she asks her to talk, she is unable to do so because her face and mouth are binded. Unknown to Lorna, Seichi and Louise watches as she interrogates Olga, but they stay to see what she would do. Lorna immediately brings out a plate of delicious pork stew, and she begins to eat it while telling Olga to confess in order to have a taste of the food. Seichi becomes angry as he notices that Lorna is trying to play a cop in the situation, then immediately breaks the door and enters the interrogation room. Louise asks Lorna what she is trying to do, and Lorna tries to explain that she is trying to make Olga confess by making her smell a tasty food she cannot have because she has been starving.
Women.
Seichi removes the binds off Olga's face and mouth, while Louise tells Lorna that she would be punished for what she has done, and as a result of that she would not be getting dinner. Lorna drops her act and stays in a corner while the adults deals with Olga. Seichi serves the pork stew for Olga, and he tells her to eat the stew, but after eating the food, Olga tells them that there is an enslavement bracelet around her neck, and that was why she was ordered to go and kill the king. She also demonstrates how the bracelet would pass a shocking waves to her body as she tries to remove it. On the other hand, the king of the Kaiser Empire receives a report from Helio that Olga is unable to kill Rands, but Helio assures the king that he would make sure she is unable to reveal that she was sent by the king, as he would kill her with the enslavement bracelet on her neck. Zakia goes to train in the woods, and he begins to think of what the assassin who tried to kill his king had told him. He recounts how he had fought with Sheen, who wanted to avenge his friend's death, which was ordered by the king of Kaiser, because she is a demon who had been selling flowers innocently. Sheen then asks Zakia why he is protecting such evil people, as they both show off their skills before he disappeared, leaving Zakia to think about what he had asked him. Zakia becomes angry after having such a conversation with Sheen, then he diverts his energy into slashing a huge tree in front of him. Seiichi feels sorry for Olga, and he begins to think of how he would remove the bracelet for her. Few minutes later, Saria and the other ladies enter the room, and they all see that Seiichi is busy with something important, so they all decide to stay and watch. Seiichi decides to use his Shiv creation skill to break the bracelet. Then he begins to visualize what he wants to do, but the stupid magician begins to think of President Lincoln, and he suddenly creates a live action of President Lincoln, and the president begins to chant for freedom. Everyone in the room begins to wonder who Lincoln is, but Seiichi tells them that they would not understand. Seiichi is able to break the bracelet, and he begins to feel like a superhero. Seeing that she is free, Olga begins to cry and Saria comforts her, while Lunlun carries the remaining pork stew like the glutton that she is. Olga tells her story that she is a beat folk and her kind were enslaved by the king in the Kaiser Empire, and her mother was taken away from her at a very young age. Years later, people of her kind were taken to an academy where they were trained to become assassins, in which they must obey every order instead of getting killed. She tells them that she had mastered the art of killing people, and she would often apologize to her victim, as it is the only way she can survive. Seiichi begins to talk to Olga, and he tells her that she can start all over again, as he would love to have her as a younger sister. Olga calls Seiichi her elder brother, and Saria immediately asks Seiichi if they can accommodate Olga. Then Seiichi agrees, and Louise tells him that she was going to ask him to look after her, as the Kaiser Kingdom could go after her once they see that she is free. Louise also adds that Rance had told her that she is too young to be punished for trying to kill him. However, Helio contacts Kreese through a magic orb, and they both go over their plan of trying to continue the war between humans and the demons, as Helio tells Kreese that he is doing his own part of the deal. They both laugh stupidly and end the transmission. Seiichi begins to take lessons on how to control his magic from Florio, and he makes much progress, and Florio commends him for doing a good job at learning more. Suddenly, Louise walks up to Seiichi, and she informs him that she would be going out of the city with the other Valkyries, as they have heard a message that a huge number of monsters are on the way to the border of Wimberg. She pleads with Seiichi to protect Rance the king once she leaves, and after thinking for a while, Seiichi agrees to do so as Louise goes to prepare herself and the other Valkyries for departure. Seiichi and the ladies go to bid the Valkyries farewell, and he asks Louise when they would be back. Then she gives him an estimated time of a month, as the journey alone would take them a week before they get to their destination. Few days after the Valkyries leave for the border, Seiichi and his women enjoy luxury.
Oh my god! Wow!
As they live in the palace while Seiichi continues his lesson with Florio. During his lesson, Seiichi is able to control his water power, but he expects the system to confirm it, but the system tells him that he has gained a new skill called Endless Spell instead. Seiichi becomes disappointed in himself, but he suddenly hears a muscular voice, which he immediately recognizes as Gussel's voice. He sees Gussel and Eris in the palace, and after exchanging pleasantries, he asks them why they are in the palace, and they tell him that they had brought an old sage to see the king. Florio becomes star-struck on seeing the old sage, and he immediately recognizes the old sage in Barnabas, who is considered as the greatest magician of all times, because he is able to master complex magical spells. Florio acts like an otaku, and he immediately asks for an autograph, but he becomes shocked as he notices that Seiichi does not know who the old man is. They take the old man to Rance, and when Rance sees the man, he immediately leaves his throne and calls him master. Then Florio informs Seiichi that Barnabas was Rance's master. Barnabas tells Rance that he came to see him regarding his academy, and once again, Florio tells Seiichi that Barnabas is the principal of the Barbados Magical Academy. Meanwhile, at the academy, Kanazuki notices that some are wrong about the students, as they all look at her and mummy to themselves. Then she thinks it is the doing of the students that bullied her. Seiichi begins to wonder where that is, but they all get interrupted when Claude runs in to tell the king that they have sighted a huge number of boss-level monsters on their way to the city. Rance instructs Claude to summon all the guards and adventurers so as to deal with the calamity that is about to befall them, as the mighty Valkyries are not around. On the other hand, the Valkyries and the army of the Black Paladin are together at the border, as they are faced by a mighty number of monsters. Louise talks to her army, and she tells them that they have to exterminate the monsters so that they would not be able to enter the country. Moreover, Kreese watches the Valkyries with his orb, and he laughs that Winberg is in trouble as his plan is working after all. The king stands at the entrance of the city along with Saichi and his women, Barnabas and the royal guards. Then they all look at the huge number of monsters making their way out towards the city. Then they call on the adventurers, who all introduces themselves in a weird manner, as they all look like perverted bastards, including Musclebrains, who calls himself the guild master. Saria and the other ladies also tell Saichi of their interest to fight the monsters. Saria becomes energetic to fight as Saichi wonders if she would fight with her human body or gorilla form. Then Arturia agrees to use her skills as an experienced adventurer, while Lulun cries to Saichi that she is scared of losing the good food to the monsters if they invade the city, but she assures him that she would fight them off so that they would not get in the way of her and her delicious foods. Then Alika tells Saichi that she would try her best to fight the monsters off by using her assassin's abilities, but she also asks him for a favor, and when he asks, she tells him to pet her head if they finish the fight against the monsters. Muscle Gussel makes his debut movement as he shows off his incredible muscles while fighting with the monsters, and this makes Saichi realize that he truly has strong muscles that are not only for show. Gussel yells like a comic book character and Saichi watches in awe. Then Barnabas tells him that Gussel is very strong, and that is why he was made the guild master. The adventurers run toward the monsters, and Saichi begins to wonder why everyone is rushing, so he decides to join them, but Barnabas tells him to be calm and watch for a while. Eris also defeats the monster in style by using her special Underrock Whip skill. Then another adventurer, who takes milk all the time, also throws some milk bottle grenade at the monsters, as he tells them that they do not allow him to continue his milk play. The most perverted adventurer of all, whose special skill is to shoot white-like liquid from his sausage, like arrows, also steps in and gives the monster a taste of his special milk. Claude also makes an entrance, and Saichi becomes calm that someone normal has joined in the fight, but after defeating a few monsters, Claude comments that some of the monsters are adorable compared to the adventurers. Another adventurer hears this, and as he turns to Claude, he tells them that the members of the Mohawks are also adorable. Then they step in with a special art from the Rose Clan. Saichi becomes amazed by the powers the perverted idiots possess. The adventurers leave the monsters in style as they all walk away like stars in a movie, but Node, the owner of the cafe, also faces a huge Beast King, and Saichi wonders what Node would do, and he becomes dumbfounded when Node defeats the monster in one strike. Then Rans comments that Node has done his work as the country's top assassin. On the side of his women, Saria punches the monsters with her special gorilla knuckle skill, which allows her to turn her arms into a gorilla arm. Then Arturia uses her ice prison skills to defeat some of the monsters, and this makes Barnabas surprised, while Lulun fights with the monsters with hatred in her heart as they are trying to come in between her and her delicious foods. Then Oliga kills 300 monsters, without any sweets, as she anticipates Saichi's promise to her after the fight. Barnabas decides to show off his own powers, as well by using a Chaos Rain spell, but when he sees that the monsters are too much to be hit by the spell, he makes another spell called the Chaos Tornado, which is like a real tornado, thereby capturing the monsters in it. Barnabas tells Saichi that he still has his sauce, but Saichi becomes happy as the monsters are reduced drastically, and he does not have to do anything. Suddenly, the king gets a report that more monsters are making their way into the city by taking a path from the forest which directly leads to the city. They are informed that the number of the monsters is much, and Saichi begins to tell himself that the waves of destruction are upon the city, even though they were promised victory, and that the real battle for the future of the country is upon them. Barnabas tells Saichi and Rans that the monsters are getting too much, and the adventurers and guards are doing their best to fight them off, but it is not enough as the monsters are increasing in large numbers. Saichi begins to think of what to do, and he decides to use his skills to create a magic to clear out the monsters at a wide range. He first envisions how he wants the attack to be, and he uses his magic creation skill to create a judgment skill to wipe out all of the monsters, and at first, he gets disappointed because the spell did not work. He falls down, and he becomes embarrassed, as he already had a moment of his own, but Barnabas immediately tells him to look as the judgment magic spell is working, and this makes Barnabas surprised as he is able to do so. The monsters get defeated throughout the entire country, and it also reaches Kreese, who falls down after the effect. Seiichi checks his status and he reads about his newfound skill, but the ladies become excited as the war is over. Barnabas commends Seiichi, but the system suddenly tells Seiichi a billion times that he has leveled up, and this makes him cry out, but at the end the system tells him politely that he has leveled up, and that he has gained more skills, but Seiichi begins to cry and he Tesla that he does not want more cheats.
What do you mean by that?
Barnabas immediately falls at Seiichi's feet, as he cries for him to come and teach his students magic at the academy, because the heroes from the other world had just been sent there. Seiichi thinks about his friends and he tells Barnabas that he has to protect Rans before Luis and the other Valkyries arrive from their journey. Then he tells Barnabas that he would not be able to leave his wife and family behind. After thinking for a while, Barnabas tells Seiichi that he can leave when the Valkyries return, and he can also allow his family to follow him, as Saria would enroll as a student while Arturia as a fellow teacher, then Lulun would be a fitness instructor while Oliga would be his assistant. Seiichi thinks about his offer, and he decides to ask the ladies, who all agree to follow him to the academy. After the disaster, Seiichi decides to take his ladies on a date, one after the other. First he takes Lulun on a food date, and after that he takes Arturia, then Saria pleads with him to take Oliga along for her own turn. They go to a park where Oliga plays with other little children, while Saria and Seiichi confess their lives to each other, but when Saria begins to cry, Oliga tells Seiichi that it is unmanly for him to make her cry. Seiichi plays with the children, but they all suddenly see a huge object in the sky, which is advertising the painting competition. Seiichi goes to the competition with his ladies, and the bouncer tells them that it is the final round, and he introduces the judge as Duperker, but Seiichi notices that the name sounds familiar. The competition begins and Clayburger comes to showcase his painting. Then Seiichi remembers him as May's friend, but when Clay shows his art, which he named art, it became an eyesore as everyone had a lot of ridiculous views of it. Even Lulun sees it as a piece of apple that she can eat. After a series of other contestants, the announcer introduces May as the last contestant, and when she reveals her painting, it is a painting of Seiichi on Lulun when she was a donkey. Then May tells the crowd that the painting is of a hero who encouraged her to take risks and grab opportunities. Seiichi begins to feel proud of himself on seeing the painting, and he tells himself that he is a good example to younger people. After announcing May as the winner, Seiichi goes to greet her, and she thanks him for helping her, but she tells him about the offer the Duke gave her to study in another country. May asks Seiichi to be her first model after she finishes her education in painting, and he immediately agrees. Few days later, a guard announces the arrival of the Valkyries, then Seiichi goes to meet them, and they all exchange pleasantries. Then Seiichi talks to Louise about his offer to teach at the Magical Academy, and Louise replies to him that she has been told about it. She thanks him for being a great master to her, and for also taking her place to protect the king while she was away from the city. On the other hand, Kreese talks to another army of the demon lord named Angry, and they both talk about how Kreese has failed, but they get interrupted by the spirit of the demon lord, which yells at them for not creating a disaster for him to awaken. Kreese tries to explain, but the demon lord yells at him that it is not enough, that they should offer him more darkness and despair. Then Angria suggests to Kreese, after the demon lord leaves them, that they would have to attack the Barbados Magical Academy because of the kind of students they have. She mentions that children of royalty and aristocrats study there, and if they kill the students there, they would be able to create more despair because of the bright futures of the students. Jesus then tells her that they would have to get going to the academy with full fires, so as not to delay the demon lord any longer. At the academy, Kanazuki recollects how she has met a fellow student who asks her about Seiichi, but when she asks the girl why she is looking for him, the girl explains to them that Seiichi does not have many friends, but he was able to save her once, and she decides to return the favor. The girl adds that they should tell him that Akron is looking for him if they eventually see him. On the day of their departure, the city holds a huge fanfare for Seiichi and his ladies. Then all of the members of the guild begins to say their goodbyes as Gussel tells him to trust his muscles. Eris tells him to try to turn all pains to pleasure, and Louise thanks him for being a great teacher and a master. Noah tells Seiichi be careful, and Claude also bids him farewell. Then Seiichi thanks all of them for making his stay wonderful. But as they leave, the ladies bid them goodbye while Lulun tells them that new food awaits her in their destination. Seiichi recounts how his stay in the city made him stronger, as he did not know that the world would be so vibrant. While in the carriage, he thanks the ladies for staying by his side, and Saria thanks him more on behalf of the ladies. After a few days of riding in the carriage, Barnabas asks Seiichi If he misses the town and he tells him that he plans to go back after he has grown more so as to show them that he is doing well. Barnabas also announces that they would soon arrive at the academy. Then Seiichi begins to wonder the kind of life that awaits him at the academy. But he chants his mantra that as long as he is with his ladies, he will be able to overcome anything. Suddenly, they hear a huge sound on the carriage, and when Seiichi checks, he sees a mysterious person in armor. Then Seiichi asks the person who he is. The man replies him that he is the hero of justice, but Seiichi calls the hero a weirdo, and he begins to wonder what would happen to his life in another world. If you have watched this recap till now, type "This is sick" in the comments. Subscribe and check out other videos. You'll definitely enjoy the story of Nagumo, who is an ugly loser left to die after experiencing betrayal by his friends. In order to survive, he eats monsters and joins forces with a sexy vampire to gain overpowered skills, which aid him in getting his revenge. Want to know more? Check out our last recap and find out. Love, like, and subscribe so we can keep bringing you entertaining recaps.